All right, we're good. I think I see the red light. I think we're recording. Okay, great. Welcome to the Lunch and Learn. Today we're hitting beginning and precepts. So we're gonna do the precepts section first, just so you guys can understand those students who might not necessarily fit into the program right away, like they don't know all their letters and they don't pass the entry placement test. Um, so we'll hit that section just so you have an understanding of that, and then we'll go into beginning so you guys can pick up that curriculum. I will tell you, although there's plenty of videos and plenty of trainings that you'll be able to see and walk through, lots of documentation you'll be able to walk through. The best way for learning SIPs is to do it. The more you do it, it's easier. Hands-on approach is always better. If you have the opportunity to practice prior to working with students, grab a staff member, someone, and practice. And then when you get to sit with kids, that'll be another added opportunity for you to grow your skills. So the more you do it, the better. I think I mentioned in the last training that the volunteers that we get probably see SIPs once a week, maybe twice, depending on their commitment. But you, as the coordinator, will see it pretty much every day, and you'll be able to pick up that skill and become the expert. It won't take you long. Trust me, it won't take you long. But I will say, having that information in front of you, the manual, that's going to be your Bible. It's going to be your sidekick during your journey with kids and SIPs. You're going to need that information in front of you every time you teach. So we'll go into the program and its different levels. Later on this week and this month, you'll see the other training levels. But let's go ahead and hop into the training. So again, we're going to hit precepts, aka letter learning names, which is actually a curriculum that's part of the SIP set. We'll go into where you can find that information and how to go through the process with the kids. Granted, you won't have a ton of kids that are in that space. I think the max we've had in one area is about 5 or 6 um, in one day, but generally you'll have a couple at least going through the school year, especially when you're looking at kindergarten enrollment, first grade. Sometimes you'll get a second grader that's in precepts too. It doesn't happen very often, but we do get kids that are 1, 2, 3, 4 grade levels behind. So keep that in mind. Um, and then again, we'll transition into beginning. Feel free to come off of mute if you have any questions or can't see something and let me know. Also, questions, all that stuff. I'll be asking for participation a few times throughout the training. So um, just FYI. So why letter learning names knowledge? Why does that matter? Tons of research about how the correlation of the foundational skills help with readiness. Those 21 lowercase letter names are something that the students need to know at least in order to get into the SIPS program. We'll go into at some point the assessments, the placement test in the beginning. The requirement is that they at least know 21 in order to move forward. If they don't, then they end up in pre-SIPS. There's a lot of data connected to SIPS. It's very grade level oriented. It's very standards oriented. Lots of research. If you ever go into the learning portal, there's a whole section on the science of reading and how all of that connects to SIPS in its programming, how kids learn, how they process this information, all that. There's tons of information on it. I won't bore you with that right now, but if you ever want access to it, there's a whole section. I can show you where to find that in the learning portal. All right. So quick overview. Generally, SIPS itself is small group, and you would do the same with the learning letter names curriculum. There's about 20 lessons. It's not long. There's some read aloud lessons, there's some practice on letter names, there's some letter cards, there's a ton of independent work, and then there's some assessments that you can access as well. Those are accessible through the portal. They're also accessible through the curriculum, which all of you should have. I think I have one I'm sending out to Sue, but everyone else should have a physical copy of the materials. Those were sent out, I think, the year before, if I'm not mistaken. So you should have all of the materials, which we'll look at in just a second. But I'll show you where to find all of this in the portal, just in case you don't have the physical items. So these are the materials that you should have gotten in your kit. You'll come with everything comes with a teacher manual. And then the rest of it would be, I think this is the only part of the curriculum that comes with little letter tiles, and more textile type stuff that you can work with the kids. Um, got your letter cards, flashcards, and whatnot. Um, you've got class record sheets. There are family letters. All of the curriculum comes with a family letter where you can introduce your parents to the section that their kids are in. Um, what else is in here? Student and teacher alphabet cards. Those are the flashcards. There are only two read aloud books for the system, but make the slides larger. Yes. Give me 1 second. Let's see. Is that better? No, it's not better. Come off of mute if you can pop off. And
Good
is it
morning,
better?
Ryan. So sorry to interrupt, but we're doing like a group training, and if it could be a little bit larger, please.
Let me see what I can move around. Give me
Okay.
a second.
Okay.
Maybe if I do it from here. Is it
So we
bigger?
don't need to see all that. No, it does say that. Okay.
I don't know if it got bigger or not. I can't tell on my end. Is it bigger? Not
It's okay.
really.
Yeah, not really, but it's okay.
Thank you, Ryan. We appreciate it.
You sure? You
We don't
might
want to
be
mess
able
up.
to make it bigger on your end.
Okay. Okay.
So look at your Zoom box. You
Uh-huh.
can take out the speaker so you don't see the speaker anymore, and you can adjust the size of the shared screen.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, because I don't think I can stretch it anymore without cutting off things on my screen. All right.
Ryan, that's perfect, actually. Thank you.
It's good? Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
I
Thank
fixed
you.
it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So the read aloud support, modeling skills is always super important. You're going to see a lot of that in the SIPS curriculum. Um, for this with the lessons, I think 1, 6, 11, 16, and 20, those lessons are where you're going to get most of that read aloud support. Um, you'll also, aside from those two books that they have, the Kips A to Z and Child's Day, you can go outside of this and add additional support. Chicka Chicka Boom Boom is a good book you can add because there are those, the use of the letters is in there. And there are several other books that you can use outside of this curriculum to support read aloud, but these are the two that they provide. Um, you're gonna make sure to print and post wall cards. They do provide you with some resources, but a lot of that stuff you can print directly from the website in a PDF form and post on your walls. Um, they're gonna give you a section in the appendix to have you teach mini lessons just to prep the kids for the routines. Um, Always review your materials in advance as well before you start and sit down with the kids. Go through all your materials and see what's needed. Go through your teacher's manual, prep yourself for that lesson. There's a section that says due ahead. Preview that information. Um, There's a section in there for connection to independent work. Look at all of that. Print your student activities because there are some activities that the students will do through the lesson. But again, all this stuff is printable either through, you can do like a copy of the book itself, or you can print it directly from the website. But definitely review all of those materials. If you have ELL students that are in pre-SIPPS, preview the stories with them ahead of time, go through the book, do a picture walk, and do all that fun stuff that way they can get used to that material in advance. Generally, you're going to want to do that with them across the board just to support them. There's also additional additional language in the curriculum to support ELL students as well, across the board for SIPPS. But we're going to go and look at the manual in just a second. So the digital resources, again, in the learning portal, you can find all of this stuff. I'm going to go into the learning portal in just a second and go in and show you where to find all of it. Again, the system is new, so if you've never been in it, this will be your first time training. It'll be a little bit easier for you. But for those of you who've been using it for years and are used to that same platform, it has changed. So it'll be like brand new. But once you get it all loaded up, you'll be able to go in and set up everything. But let's go in. We're going to go inside and look at that really quick. If you need a password for this, I've been working on going in and fixing passwords. Some of you should have received emails already, because once the account is set up, it kicks out like an email to you. If you don't get it, then that's fine. I can make sure you guys get access to whatever you need. But I'm also compiling that list that I mentioned before, where you're going to get that one email that has everything in it. So keep an eye out for that. So once you log in, there will be a spot that says content. It's going to bring up everything that's in the curriculum. There will be 3 dots. Now let me zoom in so you can see this a little better. There'll be these little 3 dots that you're going to click. On my end, since it's already selected, it's not there, but there'll be another part on here that says add to classroom. That's how you get the content into your system. So you'll go to the content library and then add it from here, and then you'll be able to pull it up just like normal and view it. All right. We're going into letter learning names. Now the system brings up in more than one way. It didn't, trust me, it did not look this clean when we used to use it. It was very hard to manage the system, especially when you're opening up the manual. It was kind of wonky, but all of that's been cleaned up. You'll be able to go in here and find your student resources. That's the things I said you can print out for your kids. And then you'll also have your access to that teacher manual. Let's look at the resources really quick. So the alphabet strip, alphabet book pages, all of that's going to be in here, including the assessments. And then when you get to your teacher's manual, you can look at it as a PDF or you can view it in their system. The system allows you, when you pull it up, let me adjust this because it's a little too big. When the system pulls up, it's got your table of contents and your fast links. It'll take you directly to any of the parts of the book that you need to look at. It'll read to you. You can go to a specific page. There's also a spot in here where you can search for keywords and whatnot. You can also, I think, remove that side panel as well. You can change the view of the different pages. You can adjust the percentage of the size. There's some tools in here where you can highlight and add notes and save it. So that's all of that's new, super exciting. So if you don't want to write directly in your book on site, you can use the digital system and write directly in that. There's also a way where you can project this onto screens or whatnot. So if you're doing lessons or walking through this with your volunteers, you can pull all of this stuff up and walk through this as well, just like I'm doing. But we're going to go into look at lesson one. And as I mentioned before, inside the the books, the manuals, they teach you how to prep for it and plan for teaching. They give you all that background information. I'm not going to bore you with going step by step through all of this right now, but it is a good read. Go in there and look at that stuff and get the information. But as I mentioned, there's a do ahead of time inside the lesson. SIPS, which you'll notice as we go through, is very scripted. And because it's scripted, it makes it a little easier to pick up and just do it, which is why we can have mentors as young as 16 pick this curriculum up and do it with training. Obviously, you would need the training and the walkthrough and support, but it's scripted, so you'll know exactly what you need to do to cover everything, which is why you need to have that manual at your side at all times. But it tells you how to prep, tells you what information to gather. It also lists the materials. It's got tons of teacher notes. Tells you how to introduce the book, how to read. And this is what I mean by scripted. So in here it says, not only does it give you the information, but stop after page 15. G is for grasshopper. So it's literally telling you what to say to the students. And in some of the cases, it will also tell you what the student is supposed to say back to you, depending on if it's a question or you're having them do a task. But again, although it's scripted, you could probably pick it up and do it just looking straight out of the book. You most likely will be looking straight out the book every time you do this. You don't have to memorize this information. You're literally supposed to have the book next to you. It's good to look at the information ahead of time just so you have an idea of the twists and turns of it. But again, for a volunteer who is probably seeing this once a week, they're coming in 30 minutes, maybe an hour before program, and looking at this information. Give them a couple minutes to sit there and review exactly what they're doing, maybe walk them through a couple things. But for the most part, it's pretty quick. The lessons aren't that long. And you should be able to get through them pretty easily. There's always a point where they discuss with the kids, doesn't matter what age or grade level you're working with especially with this part of the curriculum, they're going to engage in some type of discussion and connecting that story for the students. This particular part of the curriculum is slightly different than the rest of it, only because generally you're not having a full discussion about a story in the SIPS curriculum because they're focusing on phonics, phonological awareness, sight words, and all of that. So you're not really engaging with comprehension questions or introducing vocabulary or anything like that, aside from explaining different parts of the routine. But this only happens even just a few times. The rest of it, we'll look at lesson 2 so you can see the difference in that as well. But there are a few read aloud opportunities throughout the curriculum, but the rest of it is just introducing those letters because this section is about learning letters. All right. Okay, so what I was mentioning before is that you start to introduce letters when you get in the in-between of those read alouds. You're going to get the cards. Those are essentially wall cards. You can post those on the wall. You can keep them in your group however you want to do it. There's also printable versions, and we'll go back and look at the student resources so you'll be able to get those available. But that's the alphabet wall card. There's a big printed out paper that you can use for the kids and they can get their own copy. They can also have the strip, the alphabet strip that has that same information. Right. But again, you're introducing letter names, very simple, identifying those letters. Most of the time when you're working on this, you're focusing on both the letters and the sounds, and they're applying them into different sentences and asking the students to engage with their partners very often, especially in this section. There's not a ton of partner work when you get into the older areas, but there's a lot of direct peer-to-peer during the letter learning name section. But again, it's scripted. It walks you through all the fun stuff. Not very hard to do. I'm not going to demo a whole lesson of this. There is a video for this on the learning portal because we are going to spend a lot of time deep diving into the actual beginning curriculum. But it's not very heavy. You'll probably take 15, maybe 30 minutes on this. I think 30 is a stretch. The rest of the time, you'll be providing them with additional support. So whether you're working on those mini lessons or those practices or having them do independent work, there's also on our timeline, I added the link for it. In the important links tab. This is in our coordinator drives if you haven't seen this before. There is a website called FCRR. This is a really great website to find additional support, whether it's for pre-SIPPS students or students all the way up to 5th grade. You can find literacy activities. So if you're looking for supplemental things, you can get stuff here. And again, all in here, pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, 1st grade. And they break it down into the different sections of literacy. So if you're confused or you're not sure about what to teach a student on rhyming or alliteration, because sometimes you'll get information based on iReady that gives you a specific skill they need to learn. Or if you're familiar with academics and you're working with a kid and you're like, man, they're having a really hard time with syllables or sentence segmentation, you can find worksheets or activities that you can do with the kids that connect with that. So most of these are printable things where you can like cut and now you have a game or flashcards that you can cut out and now you have an activity to work with the kids. But this is a really good resource for support on that. Again, all grade levels, tons of teacher resources in here. But that's outside because again, those lessons are pretty short. So what are you going to do with the rest of the day for that group? Go ahead and pull additional resources, songs. If you know anything with working with kids, songs will work. So attaching a lot to supplemental activities with those kids will help them learn those letters faster. It works really well for ELL students as well. Go ahead and bring in additional things. You don't have to stick with just SIPs. You don't have to stick with just that programming, especially since sometimes the kids need something outside of that, which we can talk about later. All right, back to the training. We went through our manual. So the independent activities that you're going to see in this curriculum, there's going to be some word work, and that's going to be your alphabet strips, your student cards, all of that fun stuff, plus those additional supplemental resources that I mentioned, like with FCRR. And then there's exploration and exposure. You have to get them in front of those letters as much as you can, especially those kids who don't know them. You're going to keep track and document in your group what letters they do know and what letters they don't. And then make sure you're having in front of them those ones that they're really struggling with as much as possible. Targeted practice. So whether it's they need to figure out what a lowercase and an uppercase letter is, whether they need to learn the sequence of the alphabet. You'll be doing different versions of that throughout that curriculum, and they'll provide you the guidance for that within it, word for word. For whole group, you're gonna make sure that you are displaying those letters for them. Again, posting it somewhere, doing a flashcard version, whole group, having them holding up, having them read and repeat it as a group. You'll see a lot of repetition and call and response type stuff going on in SIPs. The whole group stuff will also be the read aloud when you're reading those books. Granted, generally your whole group of kids for that day aren't going to be on precepts. Hopefully you don't have a whole day worth of kids on precepts. So whoever is managing that group will do that read aloud. Um, Definitely do a lot of picture walks and explore where letters meet print and what it looks like in a book, what it looks like separated outside of the book, what it looks like in a sentence, what it looks like separated outside of a sentence, all of that stuff. Do a lot of games, especially with those younger kids. They're going to need it. They pick up that stuff a little bit faster when they're introduced to it in a game or a song or something like that. I also have another resource that's for free as long as you're playing it on a computer. But the parents can pay for it. It's like $4.99 across the board for the app. But it's called Teach Your Monster to Read. Super cute digital process. It's a game. It gamifies letter learning and reading skills. And I can get you connected with that as well. But that's another one that the kids like to play. It could be a reward after they're done with their lesson. They can play that. I also used to project it on the smart board if you have access to a smart board, and then that they would play it together on under one account. So if you wanted to do it on a computer where there you can just do one demo account per group, and then they can go on the board and do it. Small group extended practice. Again, you want to make sure that the students are being supported as they work individually, whether that's in pairs or in like they're just doing their independent group work at the table with you guys. But make sure they're getting that support. You may need to adjust the challenge level of the actual activities, and whether that's adding more letters or and introducing both lowercase and capital forms, mixing it up a little bit. But you want them to be able to learn both. So gauge your students as you see that they're picking up the information. You can start making it a little harder, make it a little bit more challenging for them. Resources. So first of all, this is the portal link. I believe you should be able to access these links directly through this once I upload it. But again, you can go into the learning portal and find all of that stuff. We can look at the assessment. This is also listed in the portal underneath those student resources. But this is the initial assessment. You can also use this assessment throughout the curriculum before they come out of that precept section. But you're going to test them on their letters. This gets documented in both ounce and in your paperwork, however you document your student progress. So again, you can access through the learning portal this section. There's also the class record sheet. Again, all of this stuff is in the portal. So as a group, you can document the progress of your students. It's not a lot because they're learning a few letters a day or a session. But definitely document this stuff so you can go back and provide additional support. Eventually, they will transition into beginning, and you're going to need to be able to know they still have issues with some of these letters because they only need to know 21 to move forward. So if there are other letters that they don't know, you still want to make sure you document so you can provide support for those letters. All right. And then make sure you're incorporating those reading strategies that are going to meet them where they are. And you find out where they are by one, assessing them and then working with them on those practices. So you'll be able to document, hey, this particular kid has what they call BD reversal, which is where they're flipping the B and the D when they're practicing letters. Stuff like that, you can only pick that stuff up by one, assessing them, and then two, working with them directly. So if you have someone else that's not the coordinator sitting with these kids working on those things, make sure to have them document as well. That way you can go back and review that information and support that student. All right. But before we go into the transitioning section, I actually want to go back and show you, this is too big. I want to go back and show you really quick, and we'll get into this later when we hit the beginning section, but I want to show you really quick the part that's going to determine whether they get into letter learning names or whether they jump into the curriculum. And it's going to be, no, I need to see the PDF. Wait, hold on, let's see. Okay, this is the digital version of it. I want to make sure you guys see, whoops, I closed it. I want to make sure you guys see the actual PDF. Because generally you're documenting this on paper. So I want to make sure that, there we go. Are you going to let me see the PDF? Okay, great. So this is what I was talking about. Again, we'll deep dive into this and I'll explain this a little bit more. But the placement test that they receive has this section in the beginning. This will determine whether they go into the curriculum or whether they go into letter learning names. They need, it says at least 20 to pass, but it's really 21, because generally those students will struggle if they're right at that mark. But you can move forward based on this into the next part of the curriculum. Again, we'll talk about this in a second. But if they don't pass this section, generally start here with K through first graders. They don't pass this section, they don't move forward. If for some reason you find there is a second grader that is struggling that bad to where they do not know their letters, because generally you skip this section for that grade. If you come here and you can see they don't know their letters, you might want to test them just to check. But generally in that teacher survey you get back, it'll let you know how many letters that they should know based on the teacher's observations. That may let you know in advance whether you need to test that second grader or even a third grader, God forbid, on that section. Okay. Let's go back into here. So when you transition from letter learning names or pre-SIPPS into beginning, one, they have to master those letters. They need to know the required amount of letters in order to move forward. Um, Generally moving from here, you start at beginning one. But sometimes you'll see that the student, once they get like, sometimes it's just one or two letters. Once they get those one or two letters, they blow through everything. You can do a mastery test to figure out if they can exceed out of beginning one. But I always suggest starting here out of pre-SIPPS just so they can get used to those routines and you can mastery test them later to see if they can move forward. Um, Also make sure when they come out, reinforce those skills. They're still going to need to practice those letters. They may know them now, but introduce it to them again or keep it in the rotation at least a few times until you've guaranteed it. They'll see some of those letters again coming through the curriculum, whether it's reading the stories or using any of the practice activities, but make sure that you're reinforcing the skills. Parent engagement, send stuff home. Yes, I know they get homework from teachers, but most of them will ask you anyway, especially those kids that are really struggling. Their parents know that they need the additional support. So even if it's just a couple worksheets, a book for them to, here, take this book, go find the letters that we worked on this week in the book. Use a sticky note, put a sticker in there, something. You can also connect them to the digital resources that I mentioned, whether it's sending them to FCRR or getting them connected with Teacher Monster. Also in RAS Plus, when we get that training at the end of this month, you'll see there's a section in there also to support letter learning pre-SIPPS, always mix the letters up, that will support pre-SIPPS learning and foundational skills. We also have access in that programming to Foundations A to Z, which is essentially a deep dive of all the foundational skills. So you're able to support kindergarten and first grade or those students who are really struggling with understanding letters. So there's tons of resources. Um, And I think that's all we need to talk about for transitioning. Let's move forward. Are there any questions regarding these resources? You can come off mute if you have them because I can't really see the chat in the screen. It's okay if you don't. Just keep in mind, you generally will be supporting kindergarten, first grade with this curriculum. Again, there
Ryan,
are times. Oh, go ahead.
it's Esther. Um, I put in the chat that, of course, my speech background, at this level, you might have to accommodate for any artic errors in naming letters. If they're consistent with a TH for an S or a W for an R, they're not going to say the letter sound that matches the letter because of artic errors. I just want people to be aware of that issue.
100%. That's actually a good thing to point out. Especially our younger group. Um, speech errors, all sometimes you get the change slightly. So just pay attention to that and note it. But keep in mind that sometimes they just can't make the sound with their mouth. It doesn't mean that they don't know it. They just can't. It's slightly off because of that. Also, there's also cultural differences as well in language. So it might sound slightly different, the Boston accent versus the New York accent. So uh,
Thank you.
thank you for pointing that out, Esther. Again, be sure to review your materials,
Welcome.
train your staff. I know some of you are new, so train yourself first, but then train your staff. They can also pop in and chat with me if they need a walkthrough, if anything, if you have people start later. I'm definitely open to doing additional training, and there also will be some that pop up throughout the year. Again, Florida Center for Reading Research, that's the FCRR place. Teacher Wants to Read, and there's also like a leapfrog alphabet song. There's tons of resources. On top of that, in the FCRR uh, platform, there's also a section called the Academy. In there, and I put that link also into the timeline under the important links tab. There's some additional training. So if you're not really an academic, you're new to this thing working with kids, there's a section in there that will teach you how to tutor. It'll teach you about like the basic terminology for literacy, how to support kids in different skills as a leader, as a tutor, as a support person. There's some additional resources in there if you're interested, and it should be all free. There's full courses in there. You can get certificates and whatnot if you're interested in looking for additional professional development. All right. We're gonna go into beginning. This part is gonna be the longest part of the training. Um, Essentially, beginning is going to cover word recognition strategies. It's going to cover building that independence and confidence with the kids as they move forward into learning, developing their reading. You'll get a lot of alphabetic phrases. They're going to work on a little bit of single syllable words. There's a lot of short vowels, and you'll see a lot of sight words and high frequency words in this curriculum. It's generally geared to kindergarten, first grade. Struggling second grader too can be in beginning. Even a struggling third grader, depending on how far behind they are. But generally, you'll see kindergarten, first grade in this space. The materials, you should have a whole curriculum set. You should. If for some reason something's missing, please let us know. I think we did an order last year and the year before we did a big order, but if for some reason there's something missing, something got stolen or something like that, just let us know. But a lot of this stuff is accessible and printable from the coordinator drive, or excuse me, not coordinator drive, from the learning portal if for some reason something's missing. Um, you got your teacher's manual. Every level will have a teacher's manual. Most of them come with sound cards and sight words, sight work cards. There's wall material that you could post. For beginning, you'll get little blue books. These are the student stories. These are also printable. There's a multi-sensory section as well where they can practice the different words and sounds. There's mastery and placement tests. There's also self-checks for both you and your staff in this system. So we'll talk about that as well. Class View Pro, which is what we'll use today to view the lessons, because it's a lot easier than trying to hold up a board while we're doing it through here. But the digital system, I use it all the time. It's really cool. So if you would like to go digital in your teaching, you can project it on the board. You can use a tablet. You still will need your manual. So keep that in mind. You will need your manual. But also, if for some reason you don't have a physical binder manual, you can pull up the manual on a tablet or on a computer as well. So all of the reproducible materials are in the portal, and I'll show you where to find all that fun stuff. But we're gonna go in and look at beginning. So the distinct features for beginning, there are about 55 lessons. There are 10, there's a mastery test every 10 to make sure that they've essentially gained about 80% knowledge of that data. That's the criteria, generally 80%. They break it down in the curriculum, but we'll look at that a little bit when we look at the mastery test. But mostly it's looking at phonics and decodable words. These are the general areas that you're going to study in both beginning and plus. We'll learn about plus when we do extension later on this week. Plus is essentially an upgraded version of beginning for older students, because you'll see when we look at the mastery test that certain parts of the curriculum are set only for K through third. The rest of them are set for fourth grade and up, or extend to fourth grade and up. So we'll talk about that a little bit more as that gets pointed out. But these are the areas that you're going to focus on for students in the beginning and plus area. Before we get into this, I do want to pull up that part of the lesson. Products, lessons, that placement test. You also have the resources for each of the lessons in here, the appendix, all that fun stuff. Just FYI, all that stuff is in here. Your scope and sequence is in here. So if you ever want to look and see what is being taught per lesson, that scope and sequence is in here, and it's also in your manual. Indexes, all of those printable materials that you'll need to provide to the students for that lesson, you can get from here. It's also in your binder. You can take the paper out, take a copy of it that way. But I think the easiest way is to print from the PDF. But all of that stuff is in here. And then let's eyeball this assessment. So what I was saying before, and it looks like they've also added an additional placement test in here for to separate from second and third. But here are the two placement tools. This is an update because it used to just be K through third, but apparently they've added an additional one for so actually let's look and see the difference between the two of those really quick, if they'll let us look at it. No, I don't want the digital version. I want the paper version. Oh, okay, they just separated it on there, but there's a video in here that teaches you about it. And here, let me go back. Oh, I keep closing it on accident, sorry. Here we go. I want the PDF, not the, here we go. Not the digital one. Okay, so it's gonna take us straight to the manual. Great. Okay, let me zoom out so you can see this a bit. So inside the manual, which we'll be using today for our lesson, you'll get information here. There is going to be another training specifically on the testing and assessment sections, but some of this knowledge is important for moving forward into this training. So After they've gotten into the curriculum, then you're going to go into that section related to phonics and sight words. And I was mentioning before about criteria and percentages. That's how you figure all of that stuff up. But again, we'll break down all of this once we get into the assessment training. But you do need to pass this in order to move forward, which I mentioned before. And it lists, oops. Generally, the ones that you print out from here will tell you that this is a kindergarten through third grade, but they're updated documents. A lot of them don't say this on the top, but it'll tell you in here that you should be applying this to those kids. There's a totally different placement test for fourth grade and up, which I'll show you once we get to plus. All right. Just to back up. Okay, so elements of strong routines and instruction. 4 C's to remember. Make sure you're clear, make sure you're consistent, make sure you're concise, and make sure you're receiving choral responses from the students. And what I mean by choral, think about a choir. Everybody's singing together, everybody's responding together, right? That's the same process for SIPPs. For clear, you want to make sure that the students are engaging with the work across the whole part. They need to understand what you want them to do. So when I say give expectations before you do an activity or each section of an activity, that's exactly what I mean. Tell them exactly what the expectation is prior to. That information is in the curriculum, and we'll look at that when we go into the manual. But you're literally going to be giving them that instruction exactly what you expect them to do for each part of that. For consistent, the stuff is repetitive. Like you're going to be saying the same letter 20 times repetitive, which is fine. That's what the kids need. It might feel a little bored or repetitive for you guys, but sometimes for the kids too, but it's how they're going to learn it. So they will be doing a lot of repetition. A lot of the routines are very similar, even as they go up in the curriculum. The routines are still very similar. They might change the name slightly depending on the skill, but it is essentially breaking down those sounds, breaking down those words, and learning those different skills. Concise, basically what that means is you're going to start to limit the amount of teacher talking you're doing. You want the kids to engage in the learning. So as you start to get through the curriculum, you start to learn the techniques that will allow you to release the control of the talking. You'll be using your hands a lot more. You'll be cueing them, and those cues will be short enough for them to just pick up exactly what they're supposed to be doing. Of course, you'll have to, again, give them the expectations. I would do it every time just so it's consistent. And so they remember, because even the kids, they may see you once or twice a week, just like the mentor does. And then they're coming back the next following week. Even though they're with you for the whole period of the program, sometimes even those ones that have been with you for 2 years forget some of those small pieces of the routine. So make sure that you introduce that stuff to them, but you'll start to talk less the more that you get used to the curriculum and the more that they get used to the routines. And then those choral responses, again, it has to be across the board for that. There may be a few sections to where they're responding by themselves, but the majority of it, it's all them or you modeling. Daily lessons. So generally a lesson will start with reading a story or rereading a story. Again, we'll go through the lesson so you'll be able to see what that looks like. You'll hit some type of phonological awareness skill development, phonics and decoding, sight words. There's a guided spelling and segmentation section, and then you'll do fluency practice. Do not skip the fluency practice. That's essentially them getting the opportunity to practice the skills that you've just taught them on their own. And we'll talk a little bit about fluency once we hit to that part. So we're going to go into these different routines. I'm going to go over exactly what these mean, but then we're going to transition into the actual manual. So if you have access to that, feel free to pull that up so you can follow along, or just stick it on my screen, which is absolutely fine. We will be hitting lesson 16, beginning 16, if you're interested in going in and looking at that. But as I said, the curriculum is very scripted. There are entry points to the lessons, and in those entry points, basically where they place based on their testing, those entry points will give you a full breakdown of each part, all the way up to prepping, what you need, how to set yourself up for success, how to set your student up for success, what materials you need, what you need to print, what you need to write. Again, resources can be printed, they can be displayed, they can be written on a whiteboard, however you want to do it. But they tell you how to prep for that stuff and set yourself up and the students up in advance. And we'll look at that because I believe 16, actually I think 21 is a entry point. But we'll look at a couple entry points before we go into the actual lesson. That way you can see what I mean by additional information. But we'll walk through all of that when we get to it. So when I mean scripting, you're going to get several cues on what you should be doing in the lesson. There's a section here that has your script. Say the sounds continuously, blend, and I'll demonstrate all of that for you. It's got the visual cue you're supposed to be using. It's got both list A and list B for beginning, and extension, and plus, I believe as well, list A and list B. The first one is for teaching the first time, and the second one is for reteach or for extra practice. When we get it to challenge, that list will look different and will mean something different. But for those early levels, list A and B is teach and reteach. There's also a correction section. So teaching a kid can be kind of confusing if you've never done it before. But the good thing about this curriculum is not only is it going to tell you how to teach them, it's going to tell you how to help them if they're getting something wrong. So that's all listed as well in the curriculum. Under each section, the correction is there. In addition, inside your manual and inside the learning portal, all of the routines have been pulled out and there are videos for them. There's also correction videos as well. So videos for all this stuff if you're unsure about what you should be doing with your hands or how you should be saying a certain part. There's a video and a clip for all of that. We'll go through some of this. I will also point out that every time there is a sight word, or at least a sight word that the curriculum considers a sight word, it is underlined. And that is support, one, you knowing when you need to provide the correct support for a sight word, because the support for decoding or a sound out word is different from a sight word. So they underline them so you're able to provide that support. And then for some of the levels, the students also see that underline as well. So you can point out to them like, hey, this is a sight word. This is how we do this routine for a sight word. Whereas when you get to the older grades, those lines start to disappear because they don't need that support at that point. So it does scaffold a little bit how things are taught to the students based on where they should be in the area, based on like if they mastered a space, they should be able to do this in the next space. Or if they placed in this area, they should be able to do this in this part of the curriculum. So all of that stuff will get broken down a little bit more as we go through it. But again, if you have access to the learning portal, please feel free. Otherwise, follow along with me. So let's go into we are in our teacher's manual. Yes, no, this is not the right one. Let me back out. That's the appendix. Your lesson. This is the lesson materials that I was referring to. There's PDFs for the lessons. The mastery tests are all in here. Progress tracking, we'll talk about that later. Teacher insight. They have really built out this this website to better support you guys in accessing the material. So when you get a chance, go in here and play with it. Look at all the fun stuff. but we're gonna go in here and look at the manual. Um, this actually, let me go to the regular manual because this one is they even have it by section on here, which again, this is all new stuff, so I'm super excited getting in here and looking at all of this. But we're gonna here we go. We're gonna look at the full manual. I'm doing that because I want to point out some of those additional resources that I was referring to. But on here, let's see. Through here, all of the breakdown and about the actual curriculum, what the features are, what the lesson plan components are. Definitely something you want to go back and look at if when you have the chance. Lesson components, it's gonna go in and break down the what, why, who, where, how, all that's going to be broken down through this manual. Also tons of videos listed, your assessments, how to do those. Again, we're going to do a training on that, but how to do that is already in here. Everything that you need for this curriculum is literally in here. How to use it in your classroom per student grade level, all that's in here as well. This is how you transition in and out of here, how to monitor, how to set up your class so to maximize the use of the materials, all that fun stuff. But let's go down. I said I was going to show you an entry point. I believe 21 is an entry point. So we're going to look at lesson 16 for the actual review, but I wanted to go in and show you what it looks like. So in an entry point lesson, you're going to get the outline, what they need to know ahead of time before they come into this section, because it is a section. 21 through 30 is a section. That's going to break down the content, how to prep that lesson. And then you're going to get more detailed information per level that the students are supposed to go through. So for rereading, it's going to break down exactly what you're supposed to be doing, even more so than they normally would through the other lessons, because at this point, they're fully teaching those new routines, and you shouldn't be starting in the middle of a bracket of lessons. Generally at an entry point or a placement point, you're getting that because they're teaching the routines to both you and to the students. But each section will go through it. Even in the entry point, you'll see these QR codes. Remember, I mentioned those videos you can see. If you have your phone as a mentor, as a coordinator, you can scan these QR codes and they will bring up the video for that section. So you don't have to go into the portal and find it if you don't want to, or if you don't have access to that at the moment. So you can go and scan these and get the quick videos of those routines. But it'll also give you a full script of those sections as well that will break down different points of support for the kids. So all of that stuff is in here. You'll get a first few scripts, what you say, what the students will say back. You'll still get those corrections that I was mentioning. And so that's generally what you'll see when you're looking at an entry point lesson. But we're going to go ahead and go into lesson 16. We'll quickly go through some of this. Some of it we'll skip through because it's very long and drawn out. But generally these lessons take about 30 minutes. In class, it's going to take longer because we are going through the pieces. Generally during trainings, it goes a little bit longer. So again, you'll start off by rereading a story. Again, these are reproducible. You can get these stories printed. They're not in here, the printable versions, but you can find the printable versions on the learning portal. But you'll start off by reading the story. If you're hitting an entry point or a placement spot, you will not start by rereading the story. It'll tell you that in here to skip that. We're going to skip that part for here, and we'll hit that when we go to the reading the story for that lesson and do it then. So let's look first. Can everybody see this just fine? I can zoom in a little bit just in case. We're going to go ahead and get into these sections. Okay, so for these, how this works is you're going to, again, review what you're seeing with the kids. And you say exactly what it says in the manual. Say the sound continuously blend. What that looks like for this, because you will have that visual cue, keep in mind, usually when you're doing an oral blending or some type of oral activity, you're not showing the letters. The only visual cue you'll have for this section is the provided one here, which is like the dashes in the directional line. But for example, for this one, an example of this would be at blend mat. So we'll go and we'll look at this actual routine. I'll run it through the ClassView Pro so you guys can kind of see what that looks like. But we're gonna do this lesson quickly through the portal. Close out here. ClassView. You do have to add the card deck app when you if you're using this, just like you were to add the other content, you would also have to add that app as well. All right, here's our group. We're going to go into beginning. We're going to do lesson 16. Now, I will tell you in this app, they only have editions 4th and 5th. They do not have the 3rd edition in the app anymore. They've removed that. And so if you're still using 3rd edition, a lot of that stuff's going to start to phase out throughout the database. You can still use it, but you should be looking at either with us or with your Y upgrading to 4th edition at some point. But we'll collect inventory for that pretty soon. But we're already selected for 4th edition, so we're going to start from there. This is that visual cue I was talking about, but before we get in this, just like if you were prepping for an actual lesson, you want to make sure you have your review deck ready. So I'm going to go ahead and click in my review. Letters. There's usually about 10, 20, depending on which lesson you're on. And then your sight words you also want to prep prior to. This is all listed in the curriculum. It'll tell you to pull the last 10, 15, maybe 20 sight words that you did with the kids from your lesson. And I'll show you the best part about using this because it tracks all of that stuff for you throughout this system. So it's easier to do notes later. But anyway, starting in the lesson, let's go into this view. Normally, this is what you would pull up. I'm going to pull my manual. We're going to do a double screen for this so you guys can see both. You'll have to let me know if something's too small or too big. See if they'll let me open both at the same time. Okay, perfect. So let's double screen this so you guys can see. One here. Always keep your manual up. When you're doing your activities with the kids, have your manual available. All right, so we're here at this section. The way this would work, do I have my dot? The way this would work, can you guys see my dot? Is this too big or too small? Everybody can see this? This is good, thumbs up. Okay, cool, great. All right, so the way this would work, you would hold this visual cue up in front of the kids. You would place your finger on the one side. And again, you're blending those sounds. So I'll give you an example again of how this would look. First, you tell the kids, I'm going to say the sounds continuously. You're going to blend them when I say blend. All right, ready? At blend. And the kids would say hat. So I'm going to have a couple of you come off of mute so you can help me out and pretend to be the student. We'll do 2 of these and then we'll move on to the next part. Okay. Blend. Good, thank you. Blend.
Sam.
Perfect. And so you would just move. It's very simple. It's not crazy. It's not hard to do. You're just giving them the sounds. And when they say continuously, that means no breaks between it. Just go ahead and give them the sound straight through. If for some reason, because there is a correction for this, if for some reason someone blends wrong, you're just going to repeat it for them and model it. So model the correct response. So if we did say Matt and they said met instead, you would at Matt. You're just modeling that for them. And then you would have them do it again. So generally when you model for a correction or you do a correction, you always want to have them repeat the task so they can see it correctly and they can do it correctly. All right, super easy. Segmentation, you're going to use the same visual cue. For this one, the script is say and sound. So you're going to have them say the word and then sound the word. Again, only visual cues. You're not writing out these words and these lines. You're just showing them this. They're working on the sound of the letters. All right, so let's do, I'll have a couple people come off of mute again. Say, sit.
Sit.
Sound, sit.
Yeah.
And as you can see, I'm moving along with where I want them to give me the sound, or when I want them to say. You're going to be doing that a lot. That's how you're going to release the control of the teacher talk and allowing that students to, and allowing the students to talk more, because they'll get used to those cues and you'll be able to talk less. All right, super easy. Same correction. If for some reason they're having an issue with saying and then sounding the words, you're going to model the correct response by repeating the word and then segmenting the sound for them. So give them the word. This word is sit. It. And then you have them redo it. Make sense? Any questions about these routines? You can come off of mute. Again, videos available. All this stuff is a quick breakdown available for you in the curriculum. It's a lot of words, but and that's the only reason it's scary. It's in practice, it's not that scary. And again, you don't have to memorize this stuff. You're supposed to have your manual in front of you. This one doesn't have any new words. We are going to look at new words in just a second. But for this part of the lesson, they're not introducing any new sounds. Sorry. But we will also review some sounds. So that'll happen. Every lesson, they won't be introducing a new sound. But every lesson, you should be reviewing sounds from the previous one, or sight words when we get to the sight word section. For that, let me back up just for a sec. I want to jump to another lesson just for that, just so I can show you this part of the routine. Generally, when you introduce, oh, that one doesn't have one either, sorry. Let's go to 21, since that's our intro lesson. Implementation, just that. Phonics. Okay, in the phonics and decodable section, when you introduce, you always present them with a starting sentence. Let me back so I can show you that. Beginning level, beginning 21. We always start off with a sentence. You give the sentence, either you write it on a piece of paper or print out a piece of paper, or do a dry erase board, or you can use the tablet where it's already got the sentence. But you always present the sound in an example sentence, have the student say the new sound, and then discuss the wall mnemonic. And the mnemonic is literally that picture and the little saying that goes along with it that are on your sound cards. And I'll show you that in just a second. So for this, we're introducing our new sound for H. So I'm going to do this as if I'm teaching a student so you can see how that process works. Listen to my sentence. Wear a hat on your head. This word is hat. This sound is I like to add an additional visual to certain sounds so the kids know where the sound is coming from, whether it's coming between their teeth or if it's coming just air to their hand. I like to show that because it allows them to connect some of those sounds with actions. Makes it easier for them to remember. This word is head. This sound is so normally when you're introducing, you give them the sentence. You then, where can I, hold on a second. You then show them the mnemonic, which is this. For this one, it is hat. Wear the hat on my head. And this is a continuous sound. And so that's usually listed on your card, but it's also listed in the curriculum and in the manual. A continuous sound means that you can hold it for a long time or for 1 or 2 seconds. So when you're practicing those continuous sounds with the students, you give like a 2-second count in your head when you're and hold it a little longer. Whereas a stop sound, an example of that would be the letter T. It's just really quick and fast. So for had, it's and for T, it's t. See the difference in a stop and a continuous. So you'll see that a lot throughout the curriculum too when you're teaching letters. This sound is as in hat. That's the mnemonic. And then for the next part, it says my turn again. So you're literally modeling this sound for them. And this is some of that like repetitiveness that I was talking about before. This sound is my turn. My turn again. Together. Sound. Again. So when you start to release that control, together, they're saying it with you. You're doing it together. Sound, they're doing it by themselves. Again, they're doing it by themselves. Your turn, by themselves. Sound, again, by themselves. So again, that's that release of control that I was talking about. Anytime you're introducing a sound, it's generally going to be like this. When you get to the higher levels, like later in extension, challenge, you're not doing it as many times. You might do it 2 or 3 times. But when you're introducing it in the early levels, it's going to be like 7 times you're doing that sound. You're doing it, they're doing it, you're doing it together. Lots of modeling, lots of response from the kids. When you go to review, though, it changes slightly. When you're reviewing, you're only doing the action twice generally. Sound it again. And we can go back and look at that in our lesson that we're going to go back to. We're going back to lesson 16. All right. So in our sounds, once we hit our review, remember I mentioned that you need to prep the sounds from the previous lessons. And so this is why it's important to track, right? Because if you have 20 sounds that they're working on, but each lesson, or at least every other lesson, you're getting new sounds. If you don't funnel out those ones that they've mastered, then you'll have a list of 40, 50, 100, which good, they're practicing those sounds, but you don't have enough time to go through 100 sounds in this lesson. It's a 30-minute lesson. So you're going to start to wean out some of those. Now, you're going to have to do that anyway, whether you're using the card deck app or not, right? Good thing about the card deck app is that it keeps track of them. And I'll show you how that process looks when we go into here. You'll need, for this part of the lesson, you'll need your sound wall cards. It's generally just a list of all of the sounds and their mnemonics on one page. It's a printable version. You can do it in color. You can do it in black and white. The kids will need that. You'll need that during your lesson. So if there is a correction that needs to be done where it comes to decoding your work or working with any of the sounds, you'll be able to pull and remind them. That's the correction process for the majority of that section, phonics and decoding. The majority of that section is going to be referring to that mnemonic to model that sound and then have the kids repeat it. So keep that in mind. That's part of the materials that you're going to need in this section. So for our sound here, and again, I said for reviewing, that script is in here. Oh, here we are. Mixed order, you always want to shuffle up those cards so they're not remembering the order, instead they're remembering the sound. So shuffle up those cards, shuffle up the deck. They're gonna sound again. How that works, I'll show you. I'll need a couple of volunteers to come off of mute. For this part, I'm gonna show you the sound. You're gonna wait for me. I'm gonna give you the cue. Then you're gonna give me the sound. And remember, we gotta do this together. All right, ready? Sound.
At.
Ah.
Sorry.
Okay, so let me go ahead and give you a tip. They normally tell you this in the curriculum. As we know, as adults, the letter A has more than one sound. It has a long vowel sound that is A, where it says its name, and then it has a short vowel sound where it makes the sound of the letter A. This line helps you know and the students know that this is going to be a sound that is not at the end of a word, because there's a whole saying for helping them remember. They'll start to get into that saying as they go further into the curriculum. But the first part, actually the majority of the beginning, they're going to be working with short vowel sounds. So this will always say ah, just FYI. And they're in the mnemonics, they have this, they'll get introduced to the cat at the chair or the cat being near a chair at some point. And those short vowel sounds will each correlate with the cat doing something, whether it's at the edge of the chair for E, whether it's in the chair for I, and you'll get that information prior to going into it. But generally, anytime you see the line behind it, it's a short vowel sound. And then FYI, I don't know if the delay was because my end or if the person responding was trying to figure out what was going on. But that delay with the student usually means there's some confusion, or they're unsure, or they don't know the skill right off the bat. So when you get that delay, or you'll have like a staggered bunch of kids saying the answer, one kid will say it, then another kid will say it. That means they're not doing it correlate, or you need to review that thing with them. So if you do get a delay, that's when you would go ahead and do that correction and say, this sound is ah. Bring up the picture. The cat is ah, ah, at the chair, ah. Sound, ah. My turn again, ah. I said sound the first time, my bad. And then have them sound it a couple times and then go back and have them do the sound again. Does that make sense? Again, this is all part of the correction process that's already provided. My turn again, your turn, sound. Anytime you have to do a correction early on for sounds, they usually have you show it like you're reintroducing it to them. All right. I'm going to mark this one as a didn't get this one right, just so we can go back and show that we added this back. Anytime they have to pull it out because they didn't get it right, you put it back into the queue to be retaught again in that same lesson, or to be reviewed again in that same lesson. Let's do a couple more. Sound. Again. Perfect. Sound. This sound is s, as in snake. S. My turn. S. My turn again. S. Together. S. Sound. Good. So you would just keep going through that process. So that would be an example of a correction. Sound. Good. All right. We'll skip through these just so I can show you. Oh, you see the A came back up because you do want to put it back in the list. And when you click that they got it wrong into the card deck app, it puts it back in there automatically for you. All right. And then again, as I mentioned before, it checks off which ones were gotten right and wrong. That way, when you go back to review this, you have your notes on it. FYI. Next part of the lesson. So after you've done the introduction of all the things, the next section is to read a story. They do not have that section in the card deck app because it's pretty large. The students will get a printed out version of this. So again, you can print them out from here, the papers, or you have those little blue books, which are super cute. Apparently this makes you log in every time you click off the page. All right, and then lessons. We are in 16. Lesson PDFs, we can go here. So you can print out all the stuff for the lesson from here by the list, because the lists do change the content slightly. We're on 16. Here are all your printable resources if you decide to print in advance, all the way down to your sentences. That's for guided spelling. We'll look at that later. And then we need, obviously they changed this too. The stories used to be connected to those as well, but let's go ahead and pull it from here. Family letters, sound cards, story. There we go. Read a story. They actually will pull you up to the app to read the book, which is new. Super exciting. Or you can get the printables here. Let's see if we can pull it from here. So they have the digital resource here for you to view the book as if you were looking at it like we're doing the manual. So you get the student view. This is what the student stuff looks like. So I think this is super awesome because they didn't have this before, but you can then do the story directly from a tablet, or you can project this on the board if you're doing working with your group. So our story is, can you see? They always give you a breakdown of information prior to the story. They tell you exactly how you should be reading this story with the kids or not reading the story with the kids, depending on the grade level, how you should support them. So for this particular one, it says for the first reading of a sentence in a story, you're going to do for all of the decodable words, have them sound them and then read them. That's every word that's decodable. And as I mentioned before, the decodable words will be the ones that are not underlined, because the underlined ones are those sight words. All right. And then for a sight word at the beginning of the sentence, you're going to just read it. For sight words that follow, just sweep under the word. For the rereading of a sentence in a story, read for the first word in the sentence and then sweep under all of the other words. So basically they're telling you to cue them to read. Point, pause. I usually have them read it in their heads and then read. So I'll show you what that looks like. They do give decodable support. They do want you to continue to chorally read. Again, it will tell you when they want you to stop doing that. For the decoding support, they want you to tell your students this word when you come to it. Again, this is an early lesson. Kids are still kind of picking up different sounds and combinations. So you're going to tell them the word car when you come to the story, and we'll do that when we come in here. They always give you a way to introduce the story first. You can create your own. And again, that would require you to have known the story ahead of time. Or you can use the one that they have. And then they always have the story in the book for you. So even when these underlines disappear in the student's book, you'll still have them because you have the printed story. Any corrections that need to be done will also be given to you. So for sight words, give them the word. They run into a sight word and they're struggling with it. Don't just, you got it, you can do it, or you know that word. Don't do any of that. Tell them the word. Have them read, spell, read it. Super easy. But we're gonna go back and look at introducing a sight word. I think we skipped that one, so we'll go back and look at that one after we hit this. But all of that stuff is in here. Decodable words, you model the blending of the word once, have the students reread it, and then go back to the beginning of the sentence. Anytime you have to do a correction in a sentence, you always go back to the beginning and start that sentence all over again. Just to get them in the habit of doing that when they're reading, so they can also pick up that comprehension, because a lot of the stuff is they're breaking down the word that whole sentence. So there's not a lot of time for them understanding what they're reading. So make sure you're going back so they can read that sentence so they can then get the understanding. Does that make sense? Yep. Okay, cool. All right, so the way this works, I have all the pictures. We always start with the title, just like any other book. I have them point, pause, and then we get ready to read. So if someone will come off of mute, we're going to do a couple pages just so you guys can see what this looks like. All right. Read, can you see? I'm doing it for you since I didn't have any volunteers that time. It's okay. It's okay. But you don't normally read this with them. They read it on their own, unless it tells you to read with them. But generally, that's in a situation where you're giving them support or there's a correction or something going on. All right, next page. We'll skip that one. That's just the title again. So this is generally what they look like. Normally, they're not. I don't know why the pictures aren't loading for all of these, but for whatever reason, my internet is being weird and the pictures aren't loading. But you'll get the words, you'll get a picture. I normally always have them, I'll point at the picture, look at the picture first, pause, read. Can you see the sound? Read ant. Go back to the front. Can you see the ant? It's not usually that fast if you're working with younger kids that are struggling. So as you saw, we had them read through these, but then we had them sound out this decodable word. We had them go back and then read it straight through. You're gonna get that a lot in the beginning of the level. Are there any pages that have less sight words? Not really. In the beginning of the curriculum, early on, the majority of the words are sight words because they're trying to get them that information in pretty quickly, because once they get further into the curriculum, they're going to start running into larger words and contractions and stuff like that. So they're trying to get them those sight words early on so they can understand them. But as the instruction said, point, pause, read. I can see the sound. Read man. Read and the sound at. Read rats. Go back to the beginning. I can see the man and the rat. So they've practiced those words that they're going to run into and might have an issue. And then they've gone back and read it straight through. Make sense? All right, we're not going to go through the whole book because that can be a little time consuming, but it will be, especially with those younger kids, as you start to get through it. It might take a little longer than it normally would. All right, let's bounce back to our manual a little bit. Let me go. We did have an introduction of a new sight word. So let me go here. Again, you're going to get a sentence. So let me start this part of the lesson. Introduce the sentence, read, spell, read, spell, read. That's the process for introducing. Sentence, read, spell, read, spell, read. 5 actions. Okay? Well, 6 if you include the introduction. So normally I say, listen to my sentence. We're going to learn a new sight word today. I'll get you some paper. Our new word is get. Read, get. That's the kids responding. Spell, G-E-T. Read, get. Spell, G-E-T. Read, get. Spell, G-E-T. Read, get. So again, you're not saying this with them. When you're asking them to read, they're doing it by themselves. If you do it with them, then you are doing the work for them. Okay? So anytime you're doing this, once you start introducing and you give them that word already, unless you're doing a correction, let them read it. Tell them when to read, they read it back. All right. Whoops. Review. Again, you're going to take those 10, 15, 20 sight words, depending on your time, depending on what it asks for. Sometimes there's more than one sight word, so it might take a little bit longer, but this one is specifically asked for 10 to 15. Mix that order. Okay? For the review, it's read, spell, read 3 times. That's it. Read, spell, read. When I point and swipe, you're going to read, and then you're going to spell when I point to each letter. Sometimes they don't remember. So like if I say read and then spell it for me instead, say when I say read, I mean tell me the word on the screen or tell me the word on the paper. If they spell instead, if they read instead of spell, say I want you to tell me the letters that I point to. So again, giving them the expectation of the thing so they know what they're supposed to be doing. All right. Let's do one, and I'll have a couple of you come off of mute if possible. All right. Read,
Yes.
spell.
Y-E-S.
Read.
Yes.
Yes.
And as you see my little red dot, I'm swiping, I'm pointing. You're doing this. If you're doing this on the board, you're doing this with your hand and cueing that for the kids just as well. And in the videos, you'll see a little finger going by when they do this part too. But again, you're taking out the ones that they're getting correct, the ones that they don't get correct. This word is R. Read, R, spell, and then you do that 5 times like you're reintroducing it if they get it wrong. That's how you do a correction. And then you put it back in the rotation. And then when you go back through your rotation, it should pop back towards the end as it just did. Sorry, I clicked that a little too fast, but it pops back at the end. Document which ones they got wrong and right, and make sure to transfer that over into your next day. Generally, those sight words are coming back the next day. So if for some reason a kid is absent and they miss a lesson, it's advantageous for you to do the repeat, the list B, but you can also just add those extra words depending on if it's like a duplicate lesson. It's just the changing of the words. You can add that to the rotation, but generally you want to go ahead and repeat the lesson if for some reason they're absent, because you don't want to move forward the whole group without everyone being together. But you can blend 2 lessons to make sure to cover those key points from each one. That way you can move forward if you need to. That's another conversation. We'll do that one in the instruction and assessment training. Talk more about that. Okay, and then generally there are 2 parts at the end. You're gonna hit guided spelling, which is this section. And basically what you're doing for this is you're taking all of the different points that you learned throughout the lesson and putting it together for them to practice it. Now there is guidance. It's not a spelling test. It's not any of that. They don't have to hide their paper from their friend. They all should be working together. You're going to guide them. They're going to guide each other. I normally tell them that off rip, like, hey, we're going to work together. We're going to guide each other in this next section, and we're going to practice some of the sounds and the sight words that we learned. So generally in sentence dictation or guided spelling and segmentation, you're going to get an opportunity to practice decodable words. You get an opportunity to practice the sight words, and then you'll get an opportunity to practice them together in a full sentence. But again, that will determine, the number of those will be determined based on what level you're in. The further you get up, you might get 3 to 4 decodable words, and then 2 sight words, and then a sentence. Like the number goes up. The test is pretty small right now. The practice is pretty small right now, with just the 3, because they're still learning those basic skills to go up to that next level. But this section is super easy. You're gonna get visual cues. Anytime you're decoding something or sounding out something, you're gonna use this one. When you hit the sentence, you're gonna use this one. And then when you model and check the answer, you're gonna use this one. All right. So let's start off first with the decodable word section. It tells you that that's number 1 and number 2. You're gonna say the word and use it in a sentence. They don't always give you a sentence, but most of these words are pretty easy. You can figure out a sentence. Have them say the word, have them sound the word, and then you're gonna break down each sound for that word. So let me show you how that works. Normally they're either using a piece of paper, a printable. There's printable versions of the paper where they're lined or dotted. The words are pre-dotted for you, or you can get the blank ones where they're just writing in. It's just like lined paper, or you can use lined paper, or you can use a dry erase board. If you want to collect their writing data and what they're getting right and getting wrong, the best way to do it is to use something that's use one of either their reproducible papers or to use a blank sheet of paper or something like that to collect the information. Then you just stick it in their files. It's not required. You don't have to use it, but especially with the younger kids, kind of want to pay attention to whether they're writing something backwards, or you can start to pick up stuff like if there's signs of dyslexia or anything like that. That information is important because then you can be like, hey, teacher, did you notice that they write all of their S's backwards? Is this something recurring or is this something new? So stuff that the little small fine tuning that can better support the kids can happen when you collect that information as well. Okay, so I'm gonna say the word for number one. Our word is ran. She ran to the ice cream truck. Ran. Say ran. The
Ran.
kids would say ran. Sound ran. And here we go to our visual cue. Let me make this. It doesn't get any bigger. N. What was our first sound? Right. For number one. What was our word? Ran. First sound, next sound, right, Don't leave finger space. This is one word. So remind them not to put a space in between the two letters. All right, what was our word? Ran. First sound, next sound, last sound, Go ahead and write So you're not telling them write in. You're not telling them write R. You're telling them the sound because you want them to connect in their brains that this sound looks like this. All right. Read what you wrote. Ran. All right. I want you to, what does this say? Next sound, continue through the rest of the word. Then you can have them sound it as you write it on the board. Sound. Check your work. If they make a mistake, usually you have them cross out the mistake. So like if they write run instead, have them cross the mistake out, write the correction above. Or if they do, or you can have them do it this way, have them cross out the mistake and rewrite the right word on the top. However you want to do it. I like the second one better because they're rewriting the whole word. So they're getting used to the whole word being spelled like that versus just the letter. All right, either way is fine with me. That's the process for decoding for the sentence. You're going to have them say the sentence, break down each word, whether it's decoding or a sight word. For sight words, for this section, you will need not only that sound card with the mnemonics on it, but you'll also need your sight word dictionary. That's another reproducible material that you can get directly either from the manual printing it directly from the binder, or you can get it from the learning portal from a PDF in color or in actually I think that one's all black and white. Or you can print them on colorful sheets, however you want to do it. But it's just a list of all of the sight words that are connected to beginning. Extension has one as well. Challenge has a similar something because they work with syllables versus words. But you'll have that available. So if they don't know a sight word, you don't have to go through the whole process. You can have them first. If you're unsure how to spell it, check your sight word dictionary. You can point out that what letter it starts with if they need that guidance. Or since they're working together, there's always somebody in the group who already knows how to spell it. They may also point it out for them. And so that also connects that peer-to-peer learning, and it also removes some of that teacher talk. So if they're check your sight word dictionary, they're going and looking themselves and finding it. Generally, they can figure out like if the word is see on that sight word dictionary, when you pull it up, it'll have that list, find C, and they can easily find it on that list generally. But for this, you would say, see the man. Group would say, see the man. First word, see. See is a sight word. If you're unsure how to spell it, check your sight word dictionary. But there's a little tip we need to talk about. What do we do to the first letter in a sentence? Because again, we are practicing sentences.
Capitalize it.
And they say capitalize it. Thank you for the help. And so go ahead and write C for number 3. Make sure to capitalize that first letter. And then they'll write it. What was our sentence? See the man. First word, see. Next word, the. The is also a sight word. Go ahead and check your sight word dictionary if you're unsure how to spell it. And then write the. Leave finger space because this is a sentence. Okay. What was our sentence? See the man. First word, see. Second word, the. Last word, man. Sound man, First sound, Go ahead and write What was our word? Man. First sound, Next sound, Go ahead and write ah. What was our word? Man. First sound, Second sound, ah. Last sound, Go ahead and write What word did you just write? Man. Perfect. What goes at the end of a sentence? They'll either say period, question mark, punctuation. I usually remind her it's punctuation because the punctuation can be different. It's not always a period. Punctuation, and yes, it's a period. Go ahead and write a period. All right, let's go back and check our work. What was our sentence? See the man. First word, see. Go ahead and spell it. Capital S, good. E, E. What was our sentence? See the man. First word, see. Second word, the. Go ahead and write the T. Excuse me, spell T-H-E, the. What was our sentence? See the man. First word, see. Next word, the. Last one, man. Sound, ah, What goes at the end? Period. Check your work. Simple as that. That's the end of that part. The last thing of the lesson is fluency. If you can help it, do not skip it. Very important. Opportunity for them to practice the sounds and the words that they've just learned, right? And here, have the students read the little blue book, 16, that's the one for this lesson, 3 times, and then read 15 and 14, the other books. If they have time, have them read those. So they always reread the story that they've done on their own. I usually have them whisper read. The reason why I have them do that is because we're in a small group. 1, you want to respect the group around you. 2, I need to be able to hear if they're struggling. So what I'll do for that situation when they're doing fluency is I'll have them read a couple sentences to me. And I'll document any issues they might have. Give any corrections if needed. And then I'll bop to the next kid. Can you read a couple sentences to me? They're reading to me. I give them correction where they need it. Generally, you should have 3, 4 kids in your group. Hopefully you don't have more than that. If you do, Let's work on your volunteerism and your in gaining your mentors for your group. But generally you should have about 3 or 4 kids in your group, which will give you the time to stop with each kid and work and give them the support that they need. 15 minutes. Make sure it's part of your lesson. Try not to skip it. They need the practice. Even if you're breaking this down into rotations, um, you can still give them in a separate space with another adult. Like if you don't have time to run the whole lesson and do fluency, take that and make it a separate activity where someone is sitting with them while they're reading their books, while they're practicing that. Okay? But that's it. That's a lesson. And like I said, it seems like it's a lot because we just wrote down every piece, but they literally go by pretty fast. It's about 30 minutes. It can be more based on whether uh you're new at this, whether your kids are new at this, whether there's behavior issues, whether you need to correct something more than once. Um, but pacing, don't get stressed out if it's taking a while. Um, these lessons shouldn't take an hour. If it's taking an hour, that's a little much. There might be something you need to work with your students or with your own training to get that ironed out. But generally, you should be able to get to this pretty easily in that 30 minutes time frame. But again, as you learn and as they learn, it will make a difference of the time. Um, oops. So, any questions? If you have any questions, go ahead and come off of mute. I know that was a lot. Again, it's a lot of information, but it's not a lot of stuff really as far as once you get through it.
Ryan, I want to say you did a great job teaching this.
Thank you.
I feel like this year it was even more detailed.
I'm glad
So
because I'm
thank
always
you because
unsure.
I have a couple of new people and then I have some more coming your way once they go through the hiring process, but I think this is really going to help them.
Sweet. And this one is recorded, so it'll be on the thing if you guys need it. But there's also a ton of videos on the learning portal, like whole lesson videos. So you'll get to see the whole thing from start to finish. But think about what things might be challenging to you looking at this. If you were to sit down with the students, thank you so much, Yolanda. If you were to sit down with the student and do this, what part would be challenging for you? Um, if it's something that you think you might need support on, go ahead and drop it in the chat. I'll make sure to send some tips for that. Or you can come off of mute and share. Think about what support you might need. Are there things missing? Do you need additional language support? If there will be, this will be in the learning portal for any new hires. Yes, so I'm going to add this to the coordinator drive, Beth, this whole training. But in addition to this, the learning portal will have access. If there's a new hire that needs access to it, shoot me an email with their information and I'll make sure they get attached to it. But they'll still have to go in and connect those product pieces that I was talking about with the 3 dots, but they should have access to it and I can walk anybody through any of that fun stuff. Scheduling, materials, and grouping. That's going to be probably your biggest stressor with this. And I say that because you're going to have, say, I think the total student requirement is 40 kids. You're going to have 40 kids you need to separate in groups. Now, granted, you're probably going to do like first and second on one day, third through fourth on another, or second on one day, third on another, like based on how you have your stuff set up. If you're seeing them twice in the week, also that might make a difference versus once a week. Generally everybody's seeing them twice a week. But that scheduling and materials, you're gonna have to sit down. We talked a little bit about how to schedule a little bit in the program structure training. We'll go deep dive a little bit more in how to like organize this a little better once you start to separate those groups. And also in that assessment and and instruction training that's this month. We'll also go in how to look at those grades and how to look at those tests and separate those students better. There'll be times where you'll have a kid that placed in 21, one kid that placed in 21, but you have a bunch of them that placed in 11 and you don't have enough people. We'll talk about how to solve that problem. We'll talk about how to support kids that seem like they should be in one level but don't really make the cut in practice. We'll talk about all of that. We'll talk about what to do if a kid is blowing through the lessons and it seems like they know all of this information. We'll talk about all of that. But definitely between now and your start date, start assessing what materials you need. Start looking at your schedule. Start practicing with these materials. If you don't practice, you're not going to get good at it. If you don't use it, you're not going to get good at it. Remember, use that manual. It's important. That manual, even me, you saw I skipped something with the manual in front of me. So don't try to like keep it in your brain and figure out what to do and guesstimate it. Even having like the list of sounds and the list of sight words available to you, you still need that manual because there's some supports listed in for both you and the student. Both you and the student get support from the manual. So make sure you're using those. Um, and then as a coordinator, eyeball your people, man. Make sure that they're teaching this the way it should be taught. At the end of the day, you're responsible how this instruction ends up going and you're responsible for the success of your program. So make sure that you're monitoring or taking time at least once or twice a month to monitor your groups, even if you have to take like your assistant or someone to do like a whole group and you do it in like rotations where you can monitor a group while two other people are working on a large activity with another group. Um, but think about monitoring. I'm going to show you really quick before we get off of here.
Sir, I have a question.
Sure.
What's the name of the app that you mentioned?
The card deck app.
Yeah.
Yes, so it's connected to something called ClassView Pro. So the generally the coordinator will set this up, but they'll go in and
Okay.
enter the kids' information, what their placement level is. They can even test them directly through this app, and then you'll
Mhm.
be able to set up those groups. So I will say for me, they've upgraded this and it makes it easier for me to train, but you don't actually have to have the kids in the system to set up the groups. I was able to go in, set a demo group up for beginning kids, but always group your kids. Once you figure out where they go and place them, group them in a section. You can set up all of those different lessons right through the card deck app and go ahead and implement the instructions straight from there. But also
Okay.
keep that manual next to you because you need the step-by-step instructions. So yeah, it's called the
Okay.
card deck app and ClassView Pro, and I can do a whole walkthrough of that as well if you guys need it um, at a different time. But let me go to the next slide. Please feel free to ask questions if you have them as I continue to move forward. But again, review your materials, explore the learning portal. It is new, so you do need to go. Things are not where they were before. So go in and look at everything. Read your appendix. The appendix is going to have a lot of good information. Also, that front section of each of those levels too will also have a good amount of information. Practice, practice, practice. Ask questions to both your coordinator, if you're a volunteer on here or a staff member on here, and ask questions to me. I don't mind. My email and stuff will be posted at the end of this. So if you have a question about any of the things, your coordinators can also send out questions to me as well. Self-check, that's what I wanted to show you. Let me swap over to the tips of success page, but before we go into that, let me show you where to find the self-assessments. Let's close this because they did move those. They're in the manual, so you can find them in your binders, but they, see if I can remember. I think it should be that support implementation section. Sorry, I'm still trying to remember where all the new stuff is because they have reworked this whole system. Of course, after I learned the whole thing. But this is what I'm talking about. The reflection tools. observation tools for leaders. So when you go observe as a coordinator, there's a tool in here. There's a support center. There's information on the transition from third edition to fourth, and then fourth to fifth if you go into the other parts. There's coaching. You can get certified in SIPS. There's courses in here to get certified in SIPS. But that's available. But these reflection tools, they're very helpful. There's a Google form you can use. So if you don't want to do the paper version as a coordinator, you can use the form, download it, and then accept responses, and now it's your form. But the tool, looking at it here, it breaks down each section into lesson implementation, instruction routines, student engagement, because that is also important, and then the strength of your instruction. So there's protocols listed, what you should be doing per section, what questions you should be asking, how to score yourself afterwards. But going through, when you start looking at implementation, what questions are you asking yourself? This is going to look different. This is going to be 2 days, maybe 1 day for us, because generally most of this curriculum is set for full classrooms, but it's also really good with after school. So some of the stuff will say 4 days. You can update that before you print this out, because this is printable. Questions like circle the number that reflects your observation of the effective elements. So was this effective? Was this effective? How did the students engage with the information? Did they follow the routines that they learned and practiced? How did they engage during guided spelling? Were they able to do the writing? And then questions about your actual process of instruction. How do you review this information? There's one for extension. There should be one for plus, and there's one for challenge. So there's one per level. There's also additional resources in here as well for like tracking. You can find correlations in here. There's your family letters. There's another one about progress. Let me see if I can find those. Theory. Again, they've moved everything. But also here's the library of all those routines. So if you ever were to come in here and you want to just see what the routines look like for each one, all that stuff's in here. Full lesson videos. That's what I was mentioning earlier. Multisensory, I mentioned that. That's in here as well. Those are essentially the tracing rights, and there's student reproducible material for that. It's basically taken per lesson. They have a breakdown of the sounds and the sight words that they can practice on a separate sheet. You can also send those home as homework. But I'm looking for, I might have to find that and then come back to you guys because they've moved it. But there's like a progress tracker that they have. I might actually be able to find it in the manual. I'll go back and look and let you guys know. I'll tag it in the resources that I post. But there's also like a progress tracker that you can use for your group that says in lessons 1 through 10, they should be covering these areas. And then you can take notes on whether that group is processing through that information well or not. So then when you're going to do your notes for your kids and sharing out that information to the coordinator, or using that information to move on to the next lesson or the next section, or to decide whether they've mastered something, you can then go back and do it that. You don't have to use those forms. You can use your own or use your own tracking process, but those are available. I need to locate them and then I'll let you guys know where those are. But we'll be hitting in our next training extension and plus. That is the 2nd, 3rd grade level. And we'll talk about that for the next part. But here's some tips. Always use your manual. Track your lessons and show growth. Track your lessons and student growth. Celebrate that growth. Review your lessons before you do a mastery test. The system will tell you that. It'll tell you that in the curriculum to review. But I'm telling you also to remind yourself, if normally when you take a test in school, you go through the material, you review, and then you test. So make sure you do that. Give your students expectations up front. Even if it's, we're going to read this together, listen and wait for me. Make sure you're staying focused, eyes on the speaker. Follow my finger. When I swipe, it means this. When I point, it means this. Give them what they need to know to be successful. Positive energy. If you do it with low energy, they're going to be ready to be done with that lesson in 5 minutes. So bring the energy, bring the excitement. Don't smile too hard because your cheeks might fall off. But be excited about the lesson. Show some energy into it. I like to make it, and you'll see this, I'll explain it when we start to get to like the extension and challenge sections. I'll challenge them. I'll say, now we got a challenge word. Let's see if you guys can get it. And then they're like, oh, we know this word. This word is easy. And then they'll give you the word. So add the energy. They can earn points. They can earn stickers, Skittles, candies, whatever, in this time. So bring in your behavior management in this, because I will say this is the most boring part of your curriculum for generally for both the teacher and the kid, because it's so scripted and so repetitive. Use your visual cues, hand movements, papers, all that stuff. Use that. Make sure you're using the correct visual cue. Uh, when I come to visit, I don't want to see you writing letters in those lined visual cues. There's no letters in that. That's all sound. Um, Remember to reteach and those optional lists. There are some additional lists that provide additional practice and support inside the curriculum as well. So although there might be like 6 sounds or words that they're decoding for that section, in the back of the book, there's like a whole list of additional ones that can help them with those supports. Limit the teacher talk. You're not going to be talking as much as I did in this training. You're going to be talking a lot less. So get yourself used to the routine, get them used to the routine, and then you can release some of that talking. And then choral responses are important. They have to read it together. They have to, unless it says they can stop. Otherwise, they should be doing it together. I know it's easy to be like, well, you do it, and you do it when they're corning words everywhere. It can be frustrating and you want to separate them. Don't do it. If for some reason they're doing that, bring them back together, remind them of the expectation, have them practice it. Because sometimes you just have a kid that reads really fast, and sometimes you just have a kid that reads really slow. Confidence, whatever. But make sure they're doing it together. I normally give points or extra. Oh, we got to do this again. I'll give everybody a point if we can do it together, straight through. All right, cool. And then we're good. So incentives, excitement, reward. If you have a really cool tip that helps you get through SIPS, go ahead and drop it in the chat. I'll make sure to share that out. But I think that's it. I think I have talked you guys to death enough today. There's my email. There's my phone number. If you have any questions, please feel free. Again, that next training is, let me see when that next training is. I think it's Thursday. Yes, it's Thursday. Our next training is Thursday. That's going to be extension and plus. Go ahead and pre-look at that stuff. Go ahead and pre-look at that stuff. Everybody should have access to the learning portal. If you don't, let me know. Or if you have access to the hands-on materials, please do that. Review. And look at that information. It'll be helpful. It'll get you prepared. And then I'll go through the same routines using an extension. It'll look similar, but it'll be the whole breakdown. But thank you for your time. Sorry for being over a little bit. I will see you next time. Please reach out if you have any questions or need any help with anything. Bye. Thank you.